America's Most Dangerous Woman, a title that rings with notoriety and fear, has a chilling backstory. Born into a turbulent life, her path to infamy was paved by a series of unfortunate circumstances, unyielding rage, and a ruthless ambition. Her name, once unremarkable, now sends a ripple of terror through the corridors of law enforcement agencies across the country. But how did she go from a troubled youth to becoming one of the most feared criminals in American history? Her story begins in a modest, working-class neighborhood in a decaying industrial town. Raised in a home rife with neglect and dysfunction, her childhood was far from typical. Her father, a heavy drinker with a violent temper, was frequently absent, leaving her mother to struggle with emotional instability and financial hardship. From a young age, the woman learned to fend for herself, quickly developing a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of survival. The neighborhood she grew up in was infamous for gang activity, poverty, and a constant sense of danger. In this environment, she had to grow up fast, learning to navigate both physical and emotional abuse. Her mother, overwhelmed by her own struggles, paid little attention to the growing resentment in her daughter's heart. By the time she entered her teenage years, the woman's bitterness had begun to take root. Her teenage years were marked by rebellion, truancy, and trouble with the law. It was around this time that she first encountered the local gang, initially as a way to protect herself, and later as a means to assert control over her chaotic surroundings. She quickly gained a reputation for being both cold and calculating, unafraid to use violence to get what she wanted. Those who crossed her quickly learned that she was not someone to be trifled with. Despite her growing notoriety, the woman's true potential as a criminal mastermind wouldn't be realized until later. By the time she reached her 20s, she had already been arrested multiple times, mainly for petty theft and assault. However, it was during one particular incident that law enforcement first began to take serious notice of her. After a robbery gone wrong, she shot a police officer in self-defense, leaving him critically wounded. This act of violence marked the beginning of a darker chapter in her life. She was now no longer just a street-level thug, but someone capable of calculated violence. The officer survived, but the message was clear: this woman was not afraid to kill. Over the next few years, her criminal activities escalated. She became involved in organized crime, working her way up through the ranks of a notorious criminal syndicate. Her ability to manipulate people, combined with a ruthless disregard for human life, earned her respect and fear in equal measure. She masterminded a series of high-profile heists, leaving law enforcement scrambling for leads. But it was not just her criminal acumen that set her apart. It was her cold, strategic mind. She was always one step ahead, always calculating, always planning her next move. Her involvement in violent crimes made her a prime target for law enforcement, but her ability to remain hidden in plain sight kept her off the radar. She was a chameleon, able to blend into different social circles and assume various identities, making it nearly impossible for authorities to track her down. Her network of contacts within the criminal underworld was extensive, and she often used these connections to escape tight situations. However, despite her efforts to remain in the shadows, her notoriety grew. She was soon labeled as one of the country's most dangerous criminals, a title that only seemed to fuel her desire for control. Eventually, her life of crime caught up with her. After a violent altercation that led to multiple deaths, she was finally captured by the FBI. At the time, law enforcement considered her capture a major victory. They believed they had neutralized one of the most dangerous women in America. But they were wrong. What they didn't know was that behind her cold, calculating exterior lay a mind capable of the unthinkable. She had planned every detail of her capture, knowing that her time in prison would be temporary. She was already thinking about her escape long before she was locked behind bars. Now, as she sits in a high-security prison, awaiting trial for the murders and crimes she has committed, the authorities believe they have her contained. However, the woman known as America's Most Dangerous is not someone who can be easily contained. The FBI and law enforcement officials are now scrambling, fearful of what she might do next. The seeds of her next move have already been planted, and when the time comes, she will escape once again. leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. In the end, her rise from a troubled childhood to one of the most feared women in America is a testament to the darkness that can consume a person when pushed to the edge. Her story is one of survival, but also of something much more sinister, a desire for power, control, and vengeance. It's a story that continues to unfold, with no end in sight. The day the FBI agent was killed. It was a crisp autumn morning when the FBI agent walked into the high-security prison, unaware that it would be his last. His mission that day was simple, yet critical: to extract vital information from one of the most dangerous criminals in America, a woman who had spent years evading capture and wreaking havoc across the nation. This particular interrogation was set to be the turning point in the investigation, a chance to glean insights into her network, her operations, and perhaps even her escape plans. But what the agent did not know was that he was walking straight into a trap, one meticulously orchestrated by a woman whose mind was as dangerous as the weapon she was about to wield. The woman, now known as America's most dangerous inmate, had been held in solitary confinement since her arrest, her movements and communication tightly controlled. She was kept under constant surveillance, but as authorities soon discovered, she had learned to play the system. Behind the cold, impassive walls of her cell, she had been plotting for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. On the day of the interrogation, she appeared calm and collected, a stark contrast to the fierce, dangerous persona she had developed over the years. She had been trained in manipulation, having used her charm and intelligence to climb the ranks of the criminal world. Now, in prison, those same skills were being put to use. The FBI agent who entered her cell that day was no stranger to high-stakes interrogations, but he had underestimated the woman he was dealing with. The agent, let's call him Agent Donovan, was known for his no-nonsense approach and his ability to break even the toughest criminals. He had been briefed on the woman's violent history, her intelligence, and her capacity for manipulation. But what he didn't know was how deeply she had studied him. Over the weeks leading up to the interrogation, she had been observing the prison staff, noting their routines, their weaknesses, and most importantly, the moments when they let their guard down. Agent Donovan entered her cell with a folder in hand, filled with evidence and transcripts that he hoped would be the key to breaking her. The woman, sitting with her hands folded neatly on the table, smiled as he approached, her cold, calculating eyes never leaving his face. There was an unnerving calmness about her, one that made Donovan uneasy, though he masked it with professional detachment. She greeted him politely, offering him a seat, and the two exchanged pleasantries as if they were old acquaintances. The conversation began innocuously enough. Donovan asked her about her early life, her rise to power within the criminal world, and her network. She played along, answering his questions with a calmness that belied the storm brewing within her. She had nothing to lose, and she knew it. Donovan, on the other hand, was confident that he could break her, that he could force her to reveal the secrets she had kept hidden for so long. As the interrogation continued, the woman's demeanor shifted. She began to challenge Donovan's questions, twisting his words, playing mental games with him. She wasn't just answering questions, she was testing him, probing for weaknesses. The tension in the room began to build, but Donovan was still in control, or so he thought. What he didn't realize was that with every word she spoke, she was laying the groundwork for what would happen next. The turning point came when Donovan, frustrated with her resistance, leaned in closer, pressing her for information about her associates on the outside. The woman, sensing his vulnerability, saw an opening. As Donovan leaned forward, she subtly shifted her body, her hand sliding under the table to where a concealed weapon awaited. What had seemed like an innocent conversation turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse. She struck quickly, her movements fluid and precise. In a split second, she drew a hidden blade, plunging it into Donovan's side with surgical accuracy. The agent, caught off guard, gasped in pain as blood spilled from the wound. He staggered back, reaching for his weapon, but before he could react, the woman was already on top of him. With a swift, brutal motion, She delivered a final blow, severing his artery, ensuring that he wouldn't survive. The agent collapsed to the floor, his life slipping away as the woman stood over him, her face impassive, her eyes cold. The chaos that ensued was swift. Guards, alerted by the sounds of the struggle, rushed to the scene, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. The woman had already planned her next move. The moment she killed Donovan, she triggered a series of events that would allow her to escape. She knew that the chaos of the murder would create confusion, and in that confusion, she would find her opportunity. In the aftermath of the murder, the prison went into lockdown, but the woman was already gone. She had used the distraction to her advantage, slipping through the corridors, evading the guards, and making her way toward the prison's secure underground tunnel system. Her escape was methodical, precise, and executed with the same cold efficiency that had earned her her reputation as America's most dangerous woman. The death of Agent Donovan sent shockwaves through the FBI and the law enforcement community. It was a stark reminder of how dangerous the woman was and how far she was willing to go to maintain her freedom. His death was not just a result of her hatred for the system, but also a calculated move in her larger plan to escape and disappear once again. In the end, Donovan's death was not just a tragedy for his family and colleagues. It was a stark reminder of the lengths to which America's most dangerous woman would go to ensure that she remained free. And as she vanished into the night, authorities were left with the grim realization that she had outsmarted them once again, a daring flight to freedom. The death of FBI agent Donovan sent shockwaves through the prison system and law enforcement nationwide. In the moments after he fell, the woman's calm, cold demeanor betrayed no remorse. She didn't need to linger. She had already planned for every eventuality, and the chaos that ensued was simply the next phase of her escape. As alarms blared and prison staff rushed to the scene, the woman used the distraction to her advantage. She knew exactly where the blind spots in the facility's security were, having studied the prison's layout meticulously for months. Solitary confinement, while designed to keep her isolated, had also given her time to observe the guards' routines and weaknesses. She had learned that every third Tuesday of the month, during the mandatory prisoner head count, the guards' attention would be divided, and this would be her moment to strike. The plan had begun months ago with her meticulous preparation. Hidden in her cell, she had forged alliances with other inmates, gaining information and resources. She had acquired a hidden weapon, a small but deadly blade, smuggled in by a corrupt prison staff member she had been manipulating. As soon as Donovan fell to the floor, lifeless, she didn't just stand over his body. She swiftly and silently triggered the emergency button that would cut the power to the surveillance system for several minutes. In those precious seconds, she moved quickly. The first part of her escape was to slip into the prison's ventilation system. She had learned the ins and outs of the building, including access points to maintenance tunnels. She was nimble and efficient, knowing every twist and turn of the facility like the back of her hand. Through a series of narrow air ducts, she made her way down to the lower levels of the prison. The security cameras that monitored these passages were intentionally redirected every few hours for maintenance, and she had timed her movements with precision. Emerging from the ventilation system in a seldom-used basement corridor, she took advantage of the momentary confusion. The prison had gone into lockdown after Donovan's death, but lockdown procedures in such large institutions were rarely perfect. Guards were rushing to secure the higher levels, unaware that she had already bypassed the bulk of their security. She reached the underground service tunnel, a utility passage meant for transporting supplies, knowing this was the key to her escape. This tunnel was largely overlooked by most prisoners. The guards who had patrolled it over the years were lax, treating it as a non-essential route. The woman, however, had noted its overlooked value, and it became the escape route that would lead her out of the prison grounds. After an hour of navigating the tunnel system, she reached a secluded area near the prison's perimeter fence. There, she encountered her first obstacle, a reinforced steel gate meant to deter any escape, but she was prepared. The woman had acquired a cutting torch from one of her contacts, a former maintenance worker who had been bribed to look the other way. With surgical precision, she worked through the gate's lock, and within minutes, it fell open. The hardest part of her escape was now behind her, but it didn't end there. She knew she was not free yet. Law enforcement had already been alerted to the murder, and the entire area had been placed on high alert. The FBI, local police, and even military resources were mobilized to track her down. But she had a head start, and more importantly, she knew how to disappear. With her face concealed, the woman slipped into the dense woods surrounding the prison, a place she had studied for weeks. Her knowledge of the landscape, combined with her expertise in moving undetected, meant that by the time the authorities realized she had escaped, she was already miles away. Using the cash and forged identification she had hidden on her, she flagged down a truck and, with careful persuasion, convinced the driver to take her to a remote location where she could disappear. The nationwide manhunt that followed was nothing short of frantic. News outlets broadcasted her image across the country, urging citizens to report any sightings. Local police scoured abandoned buildings, rural towns, and even remote wilderness areas, but she was nowhere to be found. As the days passed, the woman moved further and further into the shadows, using aliases and changing her appearance with the help of black market resources. Her ability to blend into new environments was extraordinary, aided by her wealth of fake identities and the contacts she had amassed over the years. The FBI initiated a manhunt that spanned multiple states, calling on federal agents, local law enforcement, and even bounty hunters to join the search. Tips flooded in from all corners of the country, but none led to her capture. Every lead turned cold, and the more authorities pursued her, the more elusive she became. She was a ghost, always one step ahead. Now, nearly a year later, her whereabouts remain a mystery. She has left no trace, no fingerprints, and no clear pattern to her movements. Some believe she has fled the country, hidden somewhere in a remote corner of the world, while others think she has completely erased her former identity and is living among the general population, waiting for the heat to die down before re-emerging with a new name and a new life. For the families of Agent Donovan and the countless others who have crossed her path, the escape is a constant reminder of the relentless danger she represents. The fear of what she might do next lingers in the air as law enforcement continues to search for a woman who has proven time and again that she is impossible to contain. The woman known as America's Most Dangerous still eludes capture, a chilling figure whose escape has become a symbol of her dark genius. Her story is far from over, and the manhunt, though quiet for now, continues, because authorities know that the day she strikes again is inevitable.